All right.
Yeah.
Great. So it's not very easy to follow a presentation when you have a bunch of pre-K kids and all these slides. And certainly the budget isn't always the most exciting thing to speak about, but I do look forward to being able to talk to you and present to you tonight our spending plan for 18-19. And my hopes for tonight is that I'm able to share with you how we're going to try to balance the needs of our students and balance that with the fiscal realities of the state and our town, and the fiscal issues that we've been dealing with. I'm hoping that I can review some of the real positive highlights, some of the real success stories we've had over the past few years, but also deal with some of the challenges that we're dealing with. And in the end, I really hope that you see this budget as a very responsible budget. I know you've had this on you for a couple of days. You've had a chance to look at the last slide. So I know we're bringing a very responsible budget forward as we do this. So I'm going to go through some of these slides quickly to try to get through this and make sure I stay on some of the slides longer that need more time. But we do build this budget as a team. This is a team effort at the administrative level, and each of the administrators work with their school buildings to try to put their budgets together as they work with us, and then we bring it to the Board of Education, and then we take it from there as we move the budget down the road. One of the most important things to keep in mind is our mission. We are here to challenge, inspire, and prepare our kids. And what that really means to me is providing them as many opportunities as possible. So when they leave us, they have as many doors and windows open and available for them to walk through. The Board of Education goals, we have 8 of them. We've talked about these a lot over the last few months, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but we're very focused on those goals and achieving them. If you go onto our website, not only can you see those goals, but you can also get updates on our primary and secondary goals that we've been used to accomplish these goals this year. I'm not going to go through that all tonight, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on our recent accomplishments. I think it's important to look back a little bit before you look at the 18-19 budget too deeply. We've made some really strong growth on the standardized testing for our kids. In fact, our math scores increased by another 12% as we went from a year ago to this year. We're getting ready for our new testing window will be in a couple of months, but we saw a major increase in math, and that's now over 2 years. And we were able to sustain the English increases that we saw from the year before. We have this bullet about the new grant-funded pre-K program. I don't think I need to say anything more about that, but that's off to a very strong start. 45 kids were taking AP classes in 14-15. 45 students. This year you have 101 students taking AP classes. And to me what that means is we're giving more and more students the opportunity to engage in really rigorous coursework. You have 80% of your kids going to college after they leave here to high school. We want to make sure that every one of those 80% and the other 20% as well have a chance to engage in some tough coursework. That might be a math class, it might be a psychology class, it might be a history course, or for some of them, they take them all. And they challenge themselves quite a bit. This year we have our first year of AP English for the juniors, and in our budget presentation we talk about adding AP Government and Politics for those poli-sci people out there for next year. But from 45 to 101 is a big jump. That's over a 50% increase in the number of students taking AP classes. But I think it's important to recognize that we don't just think of our kids as test scores. And that's the whole piece on the focus on the whole child. As you know, we've talked a lot about social emotional learning. You can't just be a good test taker or know a lot of information and be successful in this world. You have to be able to interact with people. You have to be a nice person. You have to be likable. You have to have all those genuine qualities. Someone who's persistent, someone who has those pieces. So we feel like that's just as important, but we know it'll help our kids be just as successful as doing well on a math test or doing well on an essay that they have to write. In terms of school safety, you know it's been a big piece for us. We know we don't have the SRO, but at the same time we've been layering on other support. And I got to give Mr. Bigliotti, our assistant principal here at the high school, I put him in charge of making sure that these efforts are really being pushed forward. He's done a great job. Ms. Parsons has done great work with her team and her teachers on developing and aligning the curriculum. And I did throw in a few pictures. We've got our pre-K kids, we've got our pouch patrol on the right. In terms of safety, our Charles Street entrance over at Eli Terry, working with the town, that's been a great success. Our parents love it. And we have some training going on that happened over winter break here at the high school. Our police department was very connected to our high school that day, going in and out and doing all kinds of training that day. And we hope to get them to every building so they know the nooks and crannies. In terms of additional recent accomplishment, because yes, there's a whole other slide, we moved central office from Main Street to Terryville High School, saving over $60,000 a year. That, we think, is a significant accomplishment. We've reduced chronic absenteeism. Our teachers are fabulous, but the kids have to be here. And there was, we do have some chronic absenteeism. We want to continue to bring it down. We saw a 13% decrease in the amount of chronic absenteeism from 2 years ago to last year. And we're seeing good results now. We've brought grade 6 workshop, fully implemented it, provided the training, provided the resources. That's going extremely well, and Ms. Baumgartner is doing an excellent job there. You met our interns. Mr. Perkins brought our interns to us. We're doing as much as we can there. If you're on the policy committee, or if you even on just the full board, you know that policy has been taking a chunk of our time, and we start the 6000 series instruction tomorrow night. So for those of you on that committee, I hope you've done your homework. And also the food service program. You know, there was talk a couple of years about bringing it back in-house, and it's become essentially self-funded. It's not quite there yet, but instead of paying $65,000 a year to an outside contractor, it's essentially funding itself. And so that's another accomplishment. And we see Ms. Baumgartner teaching her grade 6 workshop up there. In the upper right-hand corner is our junior AP English class. I've got a cute little pre-K kid, I believe, in that bottom chart, because I need the cuteness effect as well. And then some healthy choices that our kids have at the lunch program. But of course, we do have some challenges. As we all know, this has probably been the most difficult budget year for this district, and perhaps all districts around the state of Connecticut. We've learned about how much you cannot count on the state of Connecticut to provide the ECS funds that they say they're going to give you. That has really put a lot of stress on our system. To be completely honest, our teachers are doing the absolute best they can, but we're very lean. Our teachers have, not just our teachers, but all of our staff wear multiple hats, and I'm very proud of the work they're doing, but we've stretched ourselves about as thin as we can go. Special education costs continue to be unpredictable. Healthcare, you'll see, is a major driver in this budget. A couple other things, I've mentioned a couple of those other things up there. And another thing to keep in mind is this building, this high school, as beautiful as it is 10 years old now. Your newest building is 10 years old. And we all know if we own a structure, the older it gets, the more costs come into maintaining. So there's additional maintenance costs as we go. So enrollment, this slide just shows that over the past, this is 13 years, about 38 students a year on average, the enrollment has been decreasing here. And as you look into the next couple of years, the senior and the junior class, so two of our biggest classes in the district, only rivaled by the 6th grade class currently in our district. And so as our seniors graduate and our juniors graduate after them, we anticipate to see that 35 to 40 decrease in enrollment, because the kindergartners coming in are about 30 to 40 less than the graduating seniors. But then it will seem to level off, perhaps, as you add about a class of 90 to 100 each year, until, of course, that 6th grade class comes in. And then we'll have to see how our enrollment projections continue out from there. Another important piece to pay attention to, and I've shown you this slide in the past, is that this slide is only representative of 10 years. Over 10 years, your free reduced lunch population has gone from 17% to 31%, and seems to be holding steady in that 30 to 32% range. So this town has certainly become much needier in terms of socioeconomic status, and there's plenty of research to suggest that when students come from a family with those economic needs, they need more support when they come to school in order to be reading on grade level, which is one of the reasons why a Smart Start pre-K program makes a lot of sense in a town like Plymouth. Try to start building those skills in those children. But the intensity of the need of our students is growing. Talk to any kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, second grade teacher. They're going to tell you that the kids that we're servicing are that much more needy. And it's not just socioeconomic status that's driving that. Just in general, we're seeing far greater intensity of need. Something to pay attention to because that usually requires more staffing to support. I said chronic absenteeism is moving in the right direction, and we have, back in 14-15, I came here in March of 15, but in that particular year we had 10.8% of our students being chronically absent, and that's not acceptable. I have to give a shout out to Michelle Luba and Jill Lewandowski, our social workers, but also our principals and their attendance committees. They're being very proactive. They are going out and talking to families, especially families who have numbers that are more than we'd like to see. Some people get caught up in that, early on in the year. But we're having parent meetings, having people come in, and you see it is having an impact. We'd like to see that to go to below 5%. That's what the state's looking for. And that's what we're looking for. We'll go lower if we can. But attendance is obviously very important to us moving forward. And if the kids are here, we can teach them. If they're not here, it's very difficult to teach a child. Now let's go into the actual development of the budget. As you know, we work on a zero-based budgeting process, which means we build from the ground up. We try not to make assumptions that, hey, we'll just add 3% onto last year's budget and we'll see what we can buy with it, or we'll see where that gets us. We actually ask our principals and everybody else who built the budget, start from zero, tell us what you need, and then we'll dissect your budget. So there's been a lot of work put into this budget before it comes to you. We're going to highlight any new spending. We've made some major changes over the last few years to reduce costs, and we continue to aggressively seek additional opportunities to save money. So what are some of the priorities this year? Like I said, we want to balance the needs of the students, but we have to recognize the fiscal situation that the town is in. The town doesn't have much of a fund balance. I read where some towns have $10 million, $20 million of fund balance to rely on. We unfortunately don't have that, so we can't lean on the fund balance in order to get us out of an issue. So we have to put together a budget that's very thoughtful to that piece. We talked safety already. I'm not going to keep talking about that, but that's always important. Student achievement, always going to be critical to us. But we also want to make sure, the fourth bullet down, we're providing our teachers with the best instructional material we can give them. You want to make sure if we're going to do, you're going to have quality teachers, you need to have the right materials that they're using with their kids. And we're doing a lot of work around that. Building libraries for our elementary teachers. We built the 6th grade library for our English teacher teaching the 6th grade workshop. The second to last bullet down talks about infrastructure needs. I believe, and we actually adopted this in our budget last year, but it had to be cut because of the budget. We need to look at how we're using our facilities over the next 5 or 10 years. We have four buildings now. What configuration, what are we going to need in the future, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? And we feel strongly we need to have some different futures thought about. And we need to do that so we can think about that and not just spring it on people. I hate when I read in the newspaper, so such and such a town is going to close an elementary school because they can't close a budget gap. Well, that causes a lot of stress in the community if you do it 2 months before the end of the school year, 3 months before the end of the school year. We were trying to be really proactive this year, but we had to cut that out of our budget. But I'd like to make sure that's part of our budget for next year to do that study and get a chance to see some opportunities. I know Bristol just did a study, and they talked about 4 or 5 different scenarios that they can use with their schools. But I think that's good planning. I think it makes sense to think about the future. And of course, we want to sustain our one-to-one policy with the Chromebooks. This slide is different from last year. This talks about cuts we made this year, so we want to bring back into our budget. So we want to make sure we have a library media specialist. here at this high school. Not just, well, most importantly because we want it for the kids, because we think a library media specialist is important. At the same time, NEASC, the folks who give us accreditation, also think it's important. And if we don't have that, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. So we have that back in our budget. I want to put the part-time custodian, Eli Terry, back, and everything else you see on that list is up for discussion. But those are the things that we would like to bring back that we cut from the 17-18. However, we don't, at this point, feel we can support these items. You cut 3 literacy support folks. We're certainly not moving back to Main Street, so that's not even a possibility. The dean position at the middle school has been very successful. Ms. Walsh has done an excellent job as the dean. The secretary that we eliminated at the middle school and brought up to the high school to fill a vacancy has gone well. And the other items on there we feel are not going to make it into the 18-19 budget either. I want us to look at class sizes at the elementary level. This is Fisher Elementary School. We looked to see if maybe we could eliminate some sections at Fisher Elementary School for next year. And we don't feel that's a wise decision moving into next year given the numbers. Fisher is a Title I school. They have a great deal of need, not to say that Plymouth Center doesn't. But given their numbers and where they stand, we don't support eliminating a section at this time. However, over at Plymouth Center, given the numbers, we do believe that we can afford to eliminate 2 teachers over there in order to try to bring our budget to where it needs to be. This year we have 23 first graders, and originally it was supposed to be more like 27 when we were doing the budget, but a few families had moved out, and the number turned out to be 23. So moving into 18-19, we look to reduce those 2 teachers. What this next slide shows, reducing those 2 teachers. That number, though, includes unemployment costs. If those teachers find jobs and we don't have to pay unemployment, that savings would be more than the $62,000. We do not need 5 sections of French at Taylorville High School. The kids are not asking for it. They're not signing up for it. We only need 3 sections, and so the recommendation is to reduce the 1.0 to a 0.6. Teachers doing a great job. It's just that they are taking Spanish and not French. Some notable items that we're adding. We've been pushed to try to make sure we keep students in our district and not send them out of district. And we're also being encouraged to try to bring as many students back to our district from out of district placements. And Ms. Trinks and her team has done a great job with that. But as we've been continuing to say, that doesn't come at no cost. We do have to have support staff in our district in order to support them. I would tell you that if I had my way, I would have an additional special education teacher at Fisher Elementary School right now, but the budget doesn't support that at all at this point. But one of those 2 teachers would be going full-time at Fisher. A half-time would go to Plymouth Center, and a half-time would go to Eli to support the additional needs we have there. It's only $54,000 because one of those teachers would be paid out of the IDEA grant, so it would only be a $50,000 impact to your budget. We talked about Chromebooks all the time, so I'm not going to focus on it here. The PARAS is a similar response to what I said about the teachers. The financial software program is important because I think it's important that we have a similar, actually same platform of financial software as the town does. Currently you work off different systems. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that. So I know that, or it seems to be my impression, that the town's going to have a capital item about improving their financial software, and they're going to take the lion's share of this cost. But we should have the same software as they do. We had phase 1 of wireless access this year. It's those little boxes that you see around providing. I can never find one, I need one, but there's always these wireless access points around the buildings. Phase 2 is to be done next year. We actually wanted to do it all in one time, but we couldn't do it this year. We had to reduce the budget, so we broke it into 2 phases. Want to make some needed classroom teacher computer replacements. Our teachers our tech staff is great because they've been continuing to find parts and make computers go faster, but we do need to replace some of our very old computers that need them. Reader's Workshop at grade 7, we want to move up our 6th graders into grade 7. And then the state gave us another unfunded, or we call it a defunded mandate. They used to pay for teachers, new teachers, to get the training they need as part of their certification. When the State Department got cut, they decided, well, you towns figure out what to do. So they just gave us the cost this year, an additional cost to the districts that we have to pick up. I'm going by that next slide just for time. I always think that this slide is a good one. I'll pause on this for a moment. You've seen it before. These are all the districts that are similar to us. It's Durg F. Those are the towns that are supposedly have the same demographics as us. I argue that Wolcott doesn't, but they're still in our group. The state median is now 16,992, and we're at 14,526. I share this slide because if anybody says to you, Plymouth Public Schools are not being efficient with their money, I share this slide. We are almost at the bottom of our Durg group. If we had the state median average, we're going to have another $3.5 million in our budget. I'm not asking for $3.5 million, and no, I don't think you guys would ask for $3.5 million. But this shows that we're being very efficient with our money. What I thought also was striking, we've been looking at this data over the past few years now. In 14-15, we were $2,000 below the state median. In 15-16, we were $2,200 below the state median. In 16-17, we were at $2,466. And I believe if we had data for 17-18, it would be even a greater disparity. So we're trying to do as much as we can with the money we're given. But I'm hoping someone would say, if they're saying that we're not being efficient with our money, well, take a look at this slide. And these are supposedly all districts like us. And forget comparing ourselves to North Canaan. I talked about Windsor Locks because it's a lot like us. And somehow they're spending $19,000 a year on their kids. And we're spending $14,000. And no offense to Windsor Locks, we're outperforming them academically. So we're not just using the money efficiently, we're using it well. I do love my colleagues in Windsor Locks, and they are doing great work and moving the bar there too. Looking at expenditures by area, this is always a neat one. You'll see the schools in each case have next year's bar slightly lower than this year's bar. That often comes with different reasons. Some of it's because we moved a secretary or we eliminated a staff member, but those are all coming in lower. That's part of the zero-based budgeting that helps us. Special ed is coming in a little bit higher, and our benefits, like I said, is a major driver in our budget. And actually the next slide shows that pretty well. Healthcare right now, we're getting estimates of it being $320,000 more for next year. We're getting a 10% increase. That's a lot of money additional. We see that each year. Now, I will tell you, full transparency, I believe that's the high water mark. I've talked to Mr. Penn and I said, let's try to make this be what we believe would be the upper echelon of what they're predicting for us. Because I don't want to be surprised later on with an additional $50,000 cost. I'd rather be surprised later on, since it's so early in the budget process, with a reduced cost. So that's a 10% increase. I'm not saying it can't go higher. So make sure I'm being clear on that. My point is that we believe that likely the high water mark on that number. But if you look at the yellow bars, those are all negatives. Certified salaries down by 176. Administrative salaries down by 105. The early retirement incentive you did 2 years ago, we're going to get additional savings out of that next year. Special ed out of district, down $40,000. So those are all important pieces. And when you look at our historical increases, you see that back in 06, 07, 08, we saw 3.5 threes. Then it came down into the zero range. It was able to get a little bit of bump up in 15, 16. That 17, 18 is not the truth anymore. A 1.25% was agreed to, but really in reality we're well below a zero for the year we're in. And next year, as compared to the adopted 17-18 budget, we're looking for $12,000 increase. 0.05% increase, not 5%, 0.05% increase. And if you think about it, With a $320,000 increase in healthcare, that means we've actually cut $308,000 out of our budget. Not necessarily happily. We want to be as efficient as possible, but we recognize the difficult fiscal times we're in. Near and long-term financial risks, who knows what the state's going to do? They have put into their 2-year adopted budget $9.7 million for our ECS next year. That's the number that they're saying they're going to be giving to us. What will they unfund or defund? The state legislators? I don't know. But we do have to keep paying attention to making sure our pension and our post-employment benefits are paid for. Because remember, that's where compounding and the exponential function kills you if you don't put the requirements in. It's actually what really hurt the state by not providing the money they promised to put into certain accounts. Compounding is now getting the best of them, which is why you see those numbers at the state rising it up so quickly. Got to move a couple pages. I know what this thing was. So rising healthcare costs is going to drive the overall request. We've talked about the ECS grant being cut. We really do believe that we're trying to balance the needs of our kids. Because in all this cutting, we're able to add AP Government and Politics for our grade 10 students next year. We're able to keep class sizes at reasonable levels. We're able to add 7th grade readers workshop and the training needed and the books needed for the classroom. And a lot of this is because we're reaping the benefits of some difficult decisions. We moved central office here. It's actually much nicer here than the central office, so that wasn't that difficult. But the retirement, the solar panels, lots of things you guys have done to save money are paying off. Bringing the food service program in-house has worked. So, a timeline. Remember, we have a date, next Wednesday, January 17th, 6 to 8:30 up in the library. You guys get to dig in deep. You got the full budget packet. You can ask as many questions as you need and want. We'll have all the principals and everybody else who's built this budget present. On Valentine's Day is your next Board of Ed meeting. That's when I'll bring, that's the way the calendar fell. So
You'll be bringing lots of Valentine's that day.
yeah, we'll have to, I'll bring chocolates that day. But we have the meeting, that'll just be a 5-minute presentation from me. The way the charter got changed, we now have to have a budget to the town hall on February 15th. And the way the calendar fell this year, this is about as late as you guys can adopt the budget. So the budget has to be voted on the 14th, and then we need to bring it to the town hall on the 15th. So however long we need to go until we get a budget that the Board of Ed is comfortable with, as long as I'll be here. Then we bring, we believe that the Board of Finance will have us on, I think I saw Mr. Kilduff. I think the Board of Finance, they usually invite us on the Thursday in March, so we believe it's going to be March 15th. So we look forward to doing a similar presentation. I appreciate you coming out tonight. And then the town council meeting is generally early April, and we know also with the charter change that if the percent increase for the overall town budget is under 3%, the town council can make a decision on the budget, and it doesn't need to go to referendum. That's at least my understanding of the charter change. So at the workshop next week, there'll be plenty of time for questions, but if you have questions now, if the board has questions now, I'll certainly be happy to answer them.
I just want to say that, just to clarify, our meeting next week is open to the public.
It is.
Any questions or comments or concerns? Nothing, ladies and gentlemen? All right.
All right. Great. I look forward to the greater questions and conversations next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.